Do you often find yourself staring at a wall for 30 minutes contemplating something? All that is needed is a trigger, an encounter, a conversation, any interaction really. This is common in people who are perfectionists. I was one of them, and here's how overcoming it helped me improve my life and how it can benefit yours. Wolf in sheep's clothing. Just to get this out of the way, perfectionism is not a good thing. It's nothing to brag about, and I compare perfectionism with politicians. They are appealing at first, but when you research them, you realize they are killers. Killers of your self-worth, killers of action, and killers of success. Now I can only hope they don't kill me, and before they do, I will explain what perfectionism is. Perfectionism is a state of deficit. It is a self-imposed standard, and it involves basing your self-worth on how well these standards are met. For example, it is when you contemplate a conversation you had with a high school friend you met after 20 years. It is about not being good enough and wanting to prove yourself to other people. Have you ever done something a million times, and every time before you do the same thing, you feel like you can't do it? That is exactly what perfectionism is all about. Every time you achieve or succeed at doing something, you can always do it better, faster, stronger, smarter, or more efficient. And this may be true, but for a perfectionist, it will never be good enough. In their eyes, they will never reach the standards they set for themselves. So the better you do something in your life, the more you will think about it and think about how you can do it better. I should have done it faster. I should have said this. I should have been there for her. Sounds relatable? If you're trying to self-diagnose perfectionism right now, I say go ahead and do it. You don't need professional help with everything. I solve most of my problems myself, and there can be no harm in working on yourself, and getting professional help is really not attainable or realistic for everybody. Some effects of perfectionism are self-criticism, repeated checking, excessive time for tasks, avoidance, being over thorough with little things. So if you find yourself procrastinating a lot, overthinking random conversations, spending a lot of time correcting things, self-criticizing, or doubting yourself even if you've done it 100 times, you're likely to have a little perfectionism inside of you, and that is a fact. Scientifically, we know that perfectionism happens because of two things. The first one is genetics, and it accounts for around 30 to 40%. The second one is culture, and this is yourself or your environment, and it also accounts for around 30 to 40%. On this channel, we only talk about things that we can change, and that is the culture part, our outlook on perfection. From a very young age, we're conditioned for perfectionism by everybody. Coaches in sports, teachers in schools, parents and all else. It's the notion that we can always do better, and we can, but we're not praised for effort. We are only praised for our achievements. Achieving is obviously important because that is valued, but effort is where we start. It is the only controllable thing. Let's take training for example. You can't control how jacked you get, but you can control how much you train or how you eat. And that leads to you getting ripped. Just like a hiker or a mountaineer, the goal is to climb Mount Everest, and you do that by focusing on the next step. You achieve your goals by focusing on what you can control right now and what is in front of you right now. Another interesting thing about culturally enforced perfectionism is that in the Western cultures, perfectionism is influenced by the self, but in the Eastern ones, it is a form of pressure from people close to you. The first one is because everybody wants to be perfect around you, and the second one is because your parents are immigrants and they want you to be a doctor. And I come from the second one, but I pressure myself more than the close ones pressure me, so I've experienced both worlds. This is how perfectionism works. When perfectionism enters, you have three outcomes. You meet the expectations, you don't, or you procrastinate. If you meet the expectations, you tell yourself that is the bare minimum. If you don't, you end up being disappointed in yourself. And if you procrastinate, you end up overthinking for hours. Either way, the end of every perfectionistic process is self-criticism, or the belief that you could have done better. And this leads to low self-esteem because no standard is high enough. Impact. Your life can be so deeply rooted in perfectionism that your experience of living is in danger. You can overanalyze everything down to the little random conversations you have on the street, or do so little because you're always tweaking and changing stuff and never actually finishing. Or you can beat yourself down so much that you don't even see your worth, and everybody else is just speeding by because they're in the art of actually doing things. Perfectionism can literally rule your life if you let it affect you that much, and for some people it will always be a part of you. And we talked about it being genetic, but what is also genetic is the need to have intercourse, and you don't go jumping on people like a dog because you can't handle your urges. I mean, you have to be an adult and resist the thoughts and needs for always making a perfect thing, being a perfect friend, being a perfect boyfriend, and doing everything just the way you planned it. I mean, even right now, I have the urge to say everything in perfect English, even though it's not my native language, so I end up repeating the same sentence 10 fucking times until it sounds just right, and that makes my filming 2 hours longer, and it means that 2 hours of my life are gone forever because I wanted everything to be perfect. The funny part is when I play everything back, I will sound exactly the same every single time, and no one will notice the slight difference as they're not focused on how my nose look, but on the story I tell. Perfectionism is majoring in the minor, focusing on what in the grand scheme of things is not important at all and makes no difference. My point is that if you let perfectionism handle you, everybody will surpass you because you will do so little that nobody will ever notice you. And most importantly, you will have a life experience full of worrying and overthinking about things that you can't control. And that's what happened to me when I opened my first business. As you know, there are all these things that you should do when you open up a new business. You should do your website, you should have social media, you should legalize everything, you should make a logo, etc. And I agree that these things are important, but if you haven't got your first customer or validated your idea before telling people you're opening this big ass business, you will find yourself in a sticky situation. Yes, writing out your brand values is legit work, but at the moment you have bigger fish to fry, and you still need to see if people will bite, and then proceed with the smart and fancy stuff. It's just like when you edit a photo and you latch onto that little pixel that you don't even see when you zoom out of the whole picture, and you realize you wasted 30 minutes of your life and nerves, and in the end, it doesn't even matter. We think that if we live perfectly, we'll minimize the shame and judgment from others, that people will always see us in a perfect light, that we'll always smile, our pictures will always look aesthetic, our resume will be unbreakable. There will never be a chink in our armor that other people can point to for mistakes. That is simply not possible, and this is where we get into the stages of perfectionism. The first stage is before a task, and planning can look perfect, but the moment you start really performing the task is where it becomes messy. For example, I planned this whole YouTube video perfectly, but when I started implementing these techniques in my life is when I found that the whole thing needed to be flipped upside down. And at those times, I always keep an Eisenhower quote in my head. Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. The second stage is during a task, and after you realize everything is so messy, you rip everything up and you start a new project with a blank page. And this is just like when you jump from one task to another because they become boring and hard over time. You go from watching a YouTube video to studying for your exam to reading a book in a span of 15 minutes. And at the end, you realize that you completed none of these tasks. And the last stage is after a task. When you finish your project, all you see are flaws. You start editing, you find more mistakes, you edit those mistakes too, and all of a sudden this is no longer the same project that you planned on doing. All the tweaking made it a different thing, and then you realize that you don't like it anymore, so you end up throwing it away and the whole process starts all over again. And this is a vicious cycle of never making anything that is good enough. And when people find themselves behind on everything and they haven't done anything in a few years, they talk about perfectionism like it's a good thing because they're so detailed in what they do, and they don't even seem to notice that perfectionism is not the way, it is in the way. And here's exactly how you will fix it. The perfectionism antidote. The thing that will fix perfectionism is called the 70% rule, and I learned it from Campbell Walker. His channel name is Truthless on YouTube, and make sure to check his video out on this topic because it's awesome, probably better than mine, and he has visuals and other eye-appealing stuff. The link is in the description. But this is how it works. The 70% rule says that you always aim for 70% of perfection. You ask yourself, can I make this 70% perfect? I made a design to show you where the 70% is, and this really applies to everything. Did I go to the gym for 70% of the days I needed to? Was I focused for 70% of my workday? Can I put at least 70% effort into this task? And I know your next question is, how can I enforce this in my life so that the forces of perfectionism don't pull me in a different direction far stronger than any rule imaginable? And the answer is that you develop a mind framework. It's simple and effective. Anytime you get the urge to tweak and perfect stuff, you interrupt your thoughts by asking, was this at least 70% as good as I can make it? If the answer is yes, congratulations, you won the battle against perfectionism. Leave the project, it's done. This is basically what I do with all my newsletters and YouTube videos. After I correct the grammar and edit the sections, it's done. If I start looking for what could be better, then the whole perfectionist cycle starts and you wouldn't be able to watch this video because I would probably be still writing it. Be a grown-ass person. Send the fucking email. Finish the fucking essay. Close the fucking client. Get off the fucking chair. End the fucking cycle. And if you're looking for reasons to why this wouldn't work for you because you're special, I'll give you 3 reasons to why this works every single time. The first reason is that it lowers the barrier to entry. The problem for most people is just starting. 5 minutes after they start, it's only smooth sailing. So instead of asking yourself, can I do a perfect workout? Ask yourself, can I do a good enough workout? And after 5 minutes, you will find yourself having an excellent workout because the problem was just starting. The second reason is called the law of diminishing returns. And I've made a graphic, which I will put here on the screen so you can pause and screenshot and do whatever you want just to follow it through this video. We have an input and an output axis here. And each of these 3 parts represents a day in which we will work. And the first day is where we are the most productive, where we get the most bang for our buck, meaning we get the most done in the least amount of time. The second one is also pretty productive, but it takes us more time to get the same output. And the third day is where we start seeing diminishing returns. We're no longer productive and we're spending way too much time correcting, making the project better, tweaking it, and etc. This is where we should stop and call it good. So keep this graph in your mind and you can screenshot it or print it out and put it on your desk, on your wall, to remind you of this law. I left a link where you can get the picture downloaded in the description. So yeah, that's that. And the last reason is that quantity breeds quality. The more you do something, the better you get at it. Let's say we have 3 people in 10 days. The first person, we'll call them the 70% guy or girl. They do 5 good projects in 10 days. The second person, we'll call them the excellence person, does 3 excellent projects in 10 days. And the third person, the perfectionist, does only 1 project in 10 days. But it is the perfect project. And my question is, which person will achieve the most? If your answer is the second or the third person, you're wrong. The first one will achieve the most. And here's why. For example, in business, the 70% guy or girl made 5 ideas, finished and validated them in just 10 days. 2 ideas failed, 1 is mediocre and is doing fine, but 2 are doing very, very well. The excellence person made 3 ideas. 1 fails, 1 is okay, and the last one is very good. And the perfectionist made only 1 idea, which can easily fail. In the end, the first person who did 5 projects leaves with 2 good things and 1 thing he or she could work on, and a lot of experience in making things. And the last person depends on only 1 thing. Being a perfectionist is like entering a casino and putting it all on red instead of putting it on certain numbers so that you have a better chance of winning. Or it's like putting all your savings into 1 risky stock that might just crash and lose all your money. Don't get me wrong, it's not like changing, tweaking, or working on your project makes it worse. It's just that the benefits of correcting it are no longer worth the time that it takes, and we should just move on to the next thing. I've already talked about how I can contemplate for hours about things that are not important and should not be stressed, and that's how I used to procrastinate from writing the copy for my website because I've never done something like that before. The same thing happened with my YouTube videos, my businesses, and everything I've done. I doubted myself and searched for validation in a lot of places, and everybody told me all was good, but I just didn't think it was good enough. The advice that actually helped me the most is a framework that comes from Stoic philosophers who I like to study from, and they value progress over perfection. Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. Vincent Lombardi. Excellence is by definition something that is extremely good, and when you know perfection is not possible, you aim for excellence, and that is when you achieve the best quality of your work. And that is how I managed to get out of the perfectionist loophole, write the stupid copy for the website, start this channel, and speed up my businesses. I did this by doing everything in my power to make things as good as they can be, realizing that some things are out of my control and judging my work based on the progress I made. Things to take away. Here's a hard pill to swallow. Your work is as good as the things you finish and put out. Believe me when I say that nobody cares about your promises, your work in silence, and all that grind bullshit if you don't finish the damn thing. Use the 70% rule to finish your work, show it to people, get feedback, and get better by doing more. which gets you better. The 70% rule can also be used when you want to outsource things. For example, the thing I outsource is my video editing, and I know I can do it better than my editor right now because I know how to present myself, where to cut exactly, and how to color grade and more. But I realize that nobody will see the difference, and that's why I delegate, so other people can get more work done and I can focus more on making these videos and running my other businesses. But we'll talk more about outsourcing in the next productivity video, so things like automating your work, SOPs, and team management, so make sure you tune into the next video about productivity. One last thing. The reality is that nobody gives a shit. Everybody is so focused on themselves in this world. Nobody has time for you. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll be free. Casey Neistat. It is selfish to think that people are so focused on us that they're going to see every little mistake and judge us for it. People are focused on themselves and what is important to them. They don't see beyond their own interest, and you're unlikely to be their most important thing. You have to remember that people forget birthdays of their children, their anniversaries, to save money, to read the terms and conditions of an important contract, to look both ways when they cross the street, and they fight, cry, and literally die because they forget. When I put this in perspective, do you really think that people are going to notice that your hair looks weird on a picture that you posted online? Of course not, and this is so liberating because it gives you the freedom to do and create exactly what feels right to you. Thank you for watching. Aleksa out. PS, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's how you show me support, and this is our agreement. From now on, I write and make videos, and you smash the subscribe button and maybe leave a like or a comment if you found this information useful. You can also check out my newsletter. It's these videos but in written form with more visuals, and they come to you sooner. And my social media is also linked down below if you want daily wisdom and random stuff. And that's it. See you next Monday. Bye.